There's a lot of stuff that we haven't even released, unfortunately. Like with the flamethrower, there's one of the tank. We blew some stuff up and half destroyed a car.
Hello, welcome to My Life in Pixels. It's a very snotty Frankie Ward here recording in my toasty home on a very horrendous, rainy, cold December evening. I'm recording this the day before the podcast goes out, so it's Tuesday, 18th of December. I have my birthday in less than a week now, which is kind of weird because I guess being freelance, I'm not in the office though, so there's no kind of school's out type feeling. I'm just looking forward to the next year, trying to iron out some details, sort out Christmas, do things like that. Today I went to go see my nan. She's in hospital down in Bournemouth. She is 90. She's also a legend. She was telling the nurses that I'm on the TV. I had to then explain I'm not on the TV, but she was like, I'm very proud of my granddaughter, and that was very sweet. So now I'm sharing that with you, and I hope she gets well soon. She's a fighter. I think it runs in the family. So I got to speak to James Bardolph earlier this week. Now, Bardolph is, well, I'm a big fan of his because he gave me the opportunity of being part of the FaceIt minor earlier this year. It was a huge surprise to me to be asked to host a CS desk, especially to be part of the process that ended with the London Major Finals at Wembley's SSE Arena. So I'm super privileged to be part of that, especially as I hosted the America's Minors, which was the first event of the whole thing. So in some ways I kicked it off. That's what I like to tell everyone, even though I am but a fly in the beautiful ointment that is the London Major. And I was very, very lucky to get to work with people like James, people like Vendetta and Pimp, who were my desk sons, as I called them, all the players as well, and everyone behind the scenes at FaceIt. Fantastic. So it was an amazing experience. So thank you so much for that, James. I promise I didn't just podcast with you because I wanted to ask for another job, although that would be lovely. It was because you're a hustler. And I'm going to stop talking to James directly now and talk to you guys. You will find out about this hustle in this podcast. It's absolutely incredible. And I love talking to James as well because he just makes me laugh all the time. I mean, listening to this was one of the funnest edits I've done so far because James loves exploding things and has a relentless enthusiasm for what he does. And I think that I'm very lucky to have been part of, not the mayhem, it wasn't mayhem the minor, but it was merriment, let's say. So thank you so much, James, for talking to me and, you know, for just being so fantastic to work with earlier this year. Now, I have to say, it's happened again, guys. The audio, I messed up. I bought 2 lapel microphones to try and make the quality of the sound better. Now, I succeeded. The problem was that the first part of the interview, I forgot to switch my Zoom recording device to using those external mics that I brought. So the start of the podcast, and you heard it right at the top of the show as well, that little extract from James talking about exploding things. The audio is not great for the first 7 or so minutes, and that is because I had to do a bit of noise cancellation because thinking the microphones were working, I wasn't sat directly next to James on my microphone, and there was some air conditioning in the room. But then the audio switches, I promise. So do stick with it. I hope you won't regret it. And apologies again. I'm going to be better in 2019. So let's get the last podcast of 2018 underway. And we start off by talking about what a phenomenal year James has had. So I'll drop you in part way through.
Let's go back to, I had a picture of the show match we did in Boston where they made a graphic with team logos for God Squad versus Team Kills. Yeah. So it has been a year, and I always feel like in esports 3 months feels like a year to me, but really this year has had a lot going on.
So you've actually casted 2 CS majors this year.
Yeah. It was interesting. I didn't expect that they would give us the Boston final. We knew when we were at the major. We knew, I guess, maybe a few weeks before that we would get one. And I was thinking to myself, oh God, the first final that we might get to commentate will be at our own tournament, which kind of sucks from my perspective because I feel like we ideally want to work hard enough and be able to achieve that without kind of giving it to ourselves, So at that point I was like, yeah, this is great, but also on a personal level, it's like, the way things have gone, always semi-final over the final, so that wasn't too exciting. And then the guys at Turner sat down with everybody in Boston and they told us that we were doing the final, and I was like, okay, all right then, that's pretty cool. So that was like, it was a nice save, because I would have been really sad if the first one was the FaceIt. With how many finals have come and gone already, I'm achievement driven. I'm not like a money person. So in terms of achievement, that would have been quite disappointing. So I'm very grateful that they gave us the Boston final.
So it's a few weeks before the Boston final, though, that you found out that FaceIt had the major.
Yeah.
And as creative director for FaceIt, you were a huge part of that process as well as being on screen.
Yes and no, actually. We've done a lot of documentary stuff recently, but we also have Mike Benbenek, who is director of broadcast. So things like that documentary, I have zero involvement in, and I don't need to have involvement in. I don't need to look and say, well, my title's this, I must do this. That's just not really necessary. So the things I'd say in terms of creative direction, I think the easiest way to see what I do is if you look at the kind of videos that we put out during a season, or the stuff we have in our studio. I get a budget every season for ECS for studio props. So this season I bought, I've gone into the kind of regional of the hype beast crap because of all the sneakers or trainers, if you will, that I buy. So I know Supreme is this thing which at this point I think is popular because it's popular. So I bought a Supreme Axe and stuck it in the middle of the table. Underneath the table, just quietly in the shadows, is a Supreme brick. We bought a Supreme kayak as well. I wanted to put Henry G in that, in the Venice canals, but didn't quite I feel like there's a lot of ridiculous content that we could potentially sell to people, so I haven't done anything with that yet, but the kayak is under my desk.
So exploding things and ridiculousness, that's kind of your creative trademark?
So I think season 5, we went to Texas towards the end of it, and we found this place where you can drive tanks, you can shoot tanks, not shoot the tanks, but fire whatever the missile thing is from the tank. So to be honest, so much time has passed, I'm not too concerned about the spoilers. I drove a tank over a car, and we haven't released that yet, so there's a spoiler for you. No one else does. Watch
this space.
Yeah, so I drove a tank over a car. I used a flamethrower, which I put a picture of on my Instagram yesterday. What else did we do? We did a bunch of guns. We have the ongoing Sounds of CSGO series, so I think that's my the main thing that you can see, basically, because I think people are interested to see how the guns sound in real life versus how they sound in the game. So the AWP, for example, is a lot of people. It was funny when I first used to commentate. The Swedes and the Nordics would say AVP, right, because of the way they pronounce W, and they would get mad at me for saying AWP, and I was like, well, actually, it's a British-made gun, so I will tell you how it's pronounced.
British guns with British pronunciation.
Yeah, so we've actually gone to the Accuracy International make that. We went to their headquarters, met the guy who invented the gun in the first place, and fired technically an AWP. It has the same drivetrain, but a few bits are different, but. So that's the main thing I do, but we're doing a new series, things that should not be in CSGO, looking at the revolver and when it was released and how overpowered and broken it was. It's a fun way to do things that are outside the game and still make it relevant to the audience. So we fired a Pac 40 as well, which is an anti-tank gun, and we shot that through a car. That was pretty fun. We did blow something up as well, because we couldn't get our hands on C4, but a shape charge has the same strength as C4, so Dan blew something up, and so that's the kind of stuff I do as a creative director. The more serious things, documentaries and things and so on, are for other people. My taste is carnage and craziness.
In terms of CS, we'll talk a bit about your relationships with the fighting game community later, but first I want to find out how long you've been playing CS, because I know it's your everything in terms of games.
It is my everything, it really is. It's my wife. I've been playing for, I would guesstimate around 15 years. Just for the longest time. I'm not even sure how I got into it in the first place, but I had I had two groups of people that I played with, some English guys and some Belgian guys. I don't even know what version of the game it was because you download the big updates online and so on. So a lot of people know it was like, it was 1.3 or whatever. But at the time, I was just a casual pleb. I didn't even have a mouse pad. I had this crappy mahogany effect table from Argos, right? And I had a Microsoft IntelliMouse. And the mahogany effect table was good for the mouse. So I was like, okay, I didn't have any plans on going anywhere. So that was fine. And then my friends, I was on an IRC network called Asylum Net with a bunch of people. My channels are still there, but I never go on there. And we made a LAN in Blackpool. We hired this little hall, and just us guys went and made our own little LAN. And so I went up there with two of my friends, and then obviously it's a different table, so I had no mouse pad, so I couldn't aim at all. It was a mess. The thing is, I was pretty, good for my little bubble, at least aiming and stuff, but that just ruined it. So I had to get a mouse pad after that.
Do you use that as an excuse in show matches, Bardo? When it all goes wrong. Well, back in the day, guys, I didn't even have a mouse pad to my name.
Do you know what? I have to say that I don't like. I'm not trying to win CPR when I'm playing in a show match, okay? But also
just shank people.
But also I am. But also, like, people sometimes, like when I was playing the last show match, the last major one, to me it's like, okay, all five go this way. I don't want to go all five. Like, we've got no map control and stuff, so not everybody's trying to take it seriously. So I don't mind. I think sometimes terrible things happen, like when I pick up a Mac 10. That seems to be continuously notorious for me. Going back to the Play It Cool in Stockholm as well. In fairness, I had been awake for 24 hours then. But yeah, I'm not trying to. I mean, I want to light up the scoreboard, right? But the thing is, like, right now I think I've got 7 knives, and on my CT side I use one knife, which is a stat track knife, and it's got like 7,400 kills on it. So it's in my blood. Like, sometimes I may have thrown the odd pistol round going for a knife kill, and I'll say sorry, but I think my friends either accept it or they delete me from their friends list. So that's just who I am. I just
literally want notches
on your
stats knife.
Yeah, I can't stop it.
And in terms of actually the other CS talent that you've played with in these show matches, who is the biggest rager? Who takes it the most seriously?
Henry's definitely, just in general, the biggest. He gets the most upset if he's losing. That's not really necessarily for show matches. I don't even know if I've been on his team for a show. I can't remember, but I know from playing with him, like, he gets, he doesn't like losing.
He used to be IGL though for his team when he was
absolutely,
like
in
that era.
So whenever we play, he just decides, we're all doing this, doing that, but he doesn't want any input from anyone. So I'm a guy who, I'm one of the guys who is looking at what all 10 people are doing. So I will want to give some input or something, but he's not having any of it. It's just his way or the highway, which is cool. I respect that. I'd rather have that than have no one doing anything. So I'll take it. But I've got stuff to say, man. But people don't respect me though, right? Because I wasn't an ex-pro. Okay, so if you look at our pistol round from the show match in Dallas, that was my pistol round. On the T side, I had people going through the underpass, smokes connector, and they were like Valen's is on our side. So like, oh yeah, this must be a Valen strat. No, that's my strat. So, I never get the credit, but it's all good.
Well, hopefully you'll get the credit now. I'm going to definitely include this in the podcast, Bardo. You are going to get your credit. Maybe I'll put it on Reddit. I'll brave the CS Reddit. So if anyone's come from Reddit, hello. Thank you. Please be kind to me. Now, I mentioned before you moved into CS professionally, you were involved with the fighting game community. So you were a real estate agent, like commercial property.
Commercial, yeah. I sold offices on the South Bank, basically, from Waterloo to Tower Bridge and just beyond. So for 10 years I worked there. I worked there 3 years as an IT guy, and then they literally gave me a chance to just blag my way into selling offices. They're like, okay, if you can, I think it was like October, and they said, if you can agree 3 deals by the end of December, then we'll give you the job. So I'd be showing people around offices. I had no idea what to expect in terms of the kind of questions they would ask. So they'd be like, oh, what is the service charge on this building? What is the, whatever other business rates and whatever else? And I'd be like, I'll check on that and I'll send you an email. Like, because I was like, okay, so this is what they want to know. Like, literally no idea. I had one client who I loved, one of my favorite clients. And sometimes you'd get these guys who were inexperienced and would put this like cheeky offer and let's see what happens. It's literally pointless. But they'd be like, let's just put this in. And once one of my clients called me, I was on speakerphone because I would normally speak to his PA as speakerphone, and he said to me, you tell him that I said, fuck off, right? and that kind of stuff was great. But I actually did. The guy was like, what did he say? And I said, well, he said he told me to tell you to fuck off, because it's like, why we're not wasting each other's time, and that's a quote, so I can get away with it. But it was like the business experience, the understanding of like not faffing about, not wasting people's time, and just that was so invaluable, especially for esports, because I feel like the way the industry is, there's a lot of people who don't have business experience, and that can lead to very bizarre situations for someone who has a certain expectations of how things work. It's kind of amusing sometimes, but it's very valuable. I think just as a life skill in general, because it just changes who you are as a person, and I think that's pretty important. I was lucky enough to never get a retail job. I tried once. I gave my CV to WH Smith, and I didn't hear back. But I like the pens, man, the Parker pens. But I never had work experience in school because my school was a complete mess. My first year, my headmaster got murdered with a machete. So yeah, it was a really bad school. So I guess in a way, I was blessed not getting stuck in retail as some people can do, and random career change, got massive business experience. And on the side, I was when Street Fighter 4 came out in 2009 on PC, I didn't even know it would release on consoles because it didn't have a console because I was playing Counter-Strike and TF2. But I saw an ad for it on Steam. I was like, oh my god, I can reclaim my childhood now. I was poor back before, I didn't have money for like a SNES or anything, so now I can play and stuff, and then got into the arcades and went from there, really.
And so you're literally going from the office to run events or to go broadcast events?
First it started in Paris. So 2009, I don't know, September, I got into the fighting game community, and the London crew were, I don't remember which one at first. I think there used to be this monthly event in Paris called Bushido Impact, which was run by a guy who's nicknamed Bushido. And we, I don't know, like 10 of us went. He let us sleep on the floor of his house. And the crew there was amazing. We had a great rivalry with them, which has went on for years. It was absolutely amazing. And back then I just had a camcorder, and I was going around recording people's fights and so on. I was still shooting black and white film, which I have now, but it takes me like 3 years to finish a role now because I've got too many other things to do. But that was really cool. We went to DreamHack Winter as well, and they broadcasted it on Swedish national television as well. I think it's called SVT or something. And one of our guys, I guess it was Ryan Hart probably, who made the final. No, it was normally Ryan Hart or Zach Bennett back in the day. But they made the final, and I was like, this is amazing. So I immediately went on a European tour. We still had the casino arcade on Tottenham Court Road. So on the weekends, we would go down there. And I'd never used a joystick before. And I played Zangief, who you have to do 363 SPDs. And I didn't know that you could do it in either direction, regardless of what side you were on. I thought you had to go in a particular way. That's how much of a noob I was, but I would go there. There was this guy, Sky, who's gone back to China now, but I'd go, it was £1 to play, or £1 for 2 credits, I can't remember, but I would go with a stack of 20 £20 coins, and it'd just be me and him, and I'd just be playing him, just getting battered round after round after round. But that was fantastic. But what I realized watching, back then there was, before Team Spooky was so big, you had this guy called FADC who streamed on Ustream, which is great because they had a power icon, which Twitch didn't have. I was sad when everyone moved to Twitch, but just because of that power icon. But anyway, he was streaming in, I think, New York or America somewhere, and we didn't really have any coverage like that in Europe, in the whole of Europe. So I feel like these guys were getting spotlights, people were becoming fans of them, maybe they were getting opportunities, maybe not back then, but our guys just had no exposure whatsoever. So I started, this was gruesome, I started I was trying to go to Paris the cheap way, okay? So I'd get an overnight coach.
I did that once. A big mistake. Never do it again.
Yeah, but how tall are you?
I am 5'4.5".
I'm 6'4". And okay, I've got a story for you. Okay, so I would go an overnight coach. I would I'd arrive in Paris at like 7 a.m. or whatever, and I'd be outside the venue before the people setting up the venue even arrived. So I would go, I would record with my camera or whatever. Then I'd get another coach home that same night, another overnight coach. I did it like 2 or 3 times, but the last time I did it, there was a woman who was the same height as me, and she had the same frame as me, but she had more meat than I did. So I was in the window seat, and it's like she could have sat anywhere she wanted, but she decided to sit next to me, like the biggest guy on the bus. Her shoulder was behind my shoulder on my seat because she was that big, and I had to sit like that for 8 hours or however long it was. It was horrible. And after that, I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going Eurostar. Like, I'll just pay more. I don't care. But anyway, I went to Bushido Impact every month. And eventually, I got a Hawpage recording device, and I started recording their events for them because I don't know that they were even recording them at the time. I don't think they were. So I would record their events for them. They had this like video intro thing, so I'd put it on the videos and stick it on my channel. So it started there. Came to London as well, but eventually, long story short, or long story less long, I went from recording stuff. Basically, there'd be these tournaments around Europe, including DreamHack. DreamHack wouldn't broadcast their tournaments. They would do the top 4 in the Dream Arena Extreme on the stage. Once they made me the host of that as well, and I really was not like remotely ready to be a host. It was awful. But I didn't, I wasn't in the mindset, because then it was just a hobby. I was having a laugh. But anyway, they would only do the top 4 on the Dream Arena Extreme. So I'd fly there, and by this time I got streaming equipment in my laptop, and I would stream the rest of the tournament on my channel. They let me put the VODs on my channel, because otherwise they wouldn't exist. But at that time I was flying myself over there. I was staying in an Ibis. It took I feel like 3 or 4 years before that I even got put on the staff. I think they just assumed, X assumed that Y assumed that Z had put me on the staff list, because there's a staff canteen and staff food and stuff, so I didn't have any of that for years. I was just, just buying kebab ruler in friggin' land centres. But I was streaming a DreamHack. That really helped, I think, just the whole scene in general. We had an annual thing called World Game Cup in Cannes, which we would do at a festival of games, and then Logan Sama, he started doing a weekly tournament in HMV Gamerbase. So I always tried to make my setup as small as possible, my broadcasting setup, just because I had to fly around Europe with it, and I brought it on planes with me. So just to make it as economical as possible. So I had a suitcase, like a carry-on suitcase, with a laptop in, cabled microphones, SteelSeries headsets actually. The guy who does ESL UK, James Dean, he used to work for SteelSeries, and he gave me 4 headsets for free, and I just put them as a sponsor. So it was really small time stuff, but it was really cool. So I had a suitcase, and every Tuesday I would go to Gamerbase straight after work. I'd rush there, get the whatever bus takes you near there to Holbornish, and then just drag it along to there. And I would sit in the corner and broadcast the fighting game stuff, so people could come up and jump on the mic, and if no one was there, then I'll jump on the mic. And then eventually DreamHack started giving us some money for those tournaments and so on, and some other people as well, so I started upgrading, getting headsets, better mixers and so on. But fortunately we have an amazing archive, and really actually DDK used to tune in to that show, but for years before we ever met, because it was friggin' amazing. And he actually bought shirts that I recommended, like pink shirts or whatever. I think it was Charles Twice at the time, non-iron shirts based on the show. But the show was crazy, and if you have any interest in fighting games, you could go back and see some legendary shows. It was a really awesome time. But then we started doing Marvel versus Capcom on Thursdays as well. But my boss, I was still in real estate while doing this, and my boss made me go to these networking meetings, these BNI, Business Networking International, at 7 o'clock in the morning on Thursdays. I think it might have started. I think it started at 7. So I had to get up at stupid o'clock, go to these crappy meetings, stand up and say, "Hi, my name is James. I work for this property company. We sell this. Come and talk to me if you want to buy it." You know, it was just awful. Everybody there is a service, so it was kind of a waste of time. But I'd be falling asleep doing the Marvel stuff and spilling. I got these like giant hot chocolate drinks from Starbucks. I kept spilling them on the floor and just falling asleep and stuff. It was hilarious, but. Yeah, the height of that, I was broadcasting all of the Capcom Pro Tour in Europe. We were doing Milan Games Week with FaceIt. I started working with FaceIt informally and then full time. So we had a crossover there. I went to Kuwait to do a stream there. That was really fun. I really didn't know. I think I probably should have tried to declare my stuff, but I was like, screw it, I'm just going to put it on the plane, see what happens. Got to Kuwait airport and they were like, "Are you a DJ?" And I was like, "Yes, I'm a DJ." And we're like, "Cool, great." Walked in. Because they have these scanners. A lot of these Muslim countries have these scanners to make sure you're not bringing in alcohol and stuff like that. They didn't really care about my equipment, so that was fantastic. And yeah, some of the smaller stuff has gone now, like World Game Cup. There's a different thing there now, but that fell apart, and Bushido Impact's not there anymore. But we have all the memories on the channel, some really amazing ones as well.
What is the name of the channel so people can check it out?
It's youtube.com/HAKF. There was a time with my IRC crew where I got in with a group of hackers, and I was really young at the time, so I made my nickname Hack. I tried to make it Hackfest with a C, but so I think I wanted an email address where someone had taken that, so I just made it Hackfest without the C, and then I just shortened it to HAKF for stuff, because I'm trying to get away from once I left that scene, trying to get away from that. But yeah.
So how did this become a full-time thing? Because you started to work for FaceIt and then you moved, I guess, from real estate into esports full-time.
Yeah, I think, well, firstly, Fnatic were doing, well, you familiar with Meltdown Bar?
Yes.
Okay. I know the people who own that. Mm-hmm. And actually, I don't know how I met with her in the first place, but I was still working in property at the time, and they were looking for a place. So we had dinner. She came to my office, and I found that place for them where they are at the moment.
The one that's in Caledonian Road.
Yeah. Yeah. But Fnatic were doing an event there, and they had Khan commentating amongst others. And I watched it, and I just thought, like, I feel like I have something to offer. Based on what I'm seeing, I feel like I have something to offer. So I emailed Khan and said, I would be interested in doing some commentary if you have any opportunities available. And that's something they did once in a blue moon. But he was friendly with FaceIt, who were doing the cups at the time. So he forwarded my details to Michele, and then he asked me to come in. At the time, they were sharing an office with Twitch, the smallest one, where it was basically Twitch had an office and then the studio was a room.
And the toilet used to vibrate the office, apparently. If someone flushed the loo, apparently the room was so small and just a little bit shonky. And I think there was like 8 of them there or something.
Yeah, it was pretty small.
Yeah.
I once flew a drone in the kitchen into a shelf and smashed some stuff up. But anyway, so he put me in touch with him. So they were doing cups and things, and that's how I met Dan. And so at the time, Dan was working for them full time, but random people, like whoever was available, would come in and on that day and do broadcasts and things.
But you never actually cast CS before you spoke to Khan at that event in Meltdown?
No, You
just decided, I'm going to be really good for this.
Yeah, because obviously in the fighting game community, I wasn't a dedicated commentator per se. I was a production, but if people weren't around for the more casual things, then I would just have a microphone on anyway, turn my mic on and just commentate stuff. But the height of that would be Stunfest in France, in West France, because they have their own thing going on there. But they would have loads of different games, really obscure games for this stage, like Garou, Mark of the Wolves and things, and games that I don't really or have ever played almost, like King of Fighters, right? Which are popular games, but just not my game. I'm a Street Fighter pleb. So a lot of these games, I would be the only person on stage. I wouldn't have any English commentators for these games. And I don't always have, because I was like a one-man band for those things. I couldn't like run and try to get someone like, hey, do you want to commentate? Because I'm just on the stage, I've got to run the broadcast. So I'd be commentating Tekken, King of Fighters, Gary Mark of the Wolves, Street Fighter versus Capcom versus Capcom versus SNK, CVS2 and stuff, like games I haven't played on a professional level and I have no idea about the meta or anything, but I'd have to, wing it. I found it very like Terry Wogan and Eurovision Song Contest. That's how he inspired me for that. But I thought with my personality I'd have something to offer because it was really dry. So I don't remember the first commentaries with Dan, but I probably didn't have a scope of what I was doing or any structure, so I'm sure it was absolutely awful. Dan remembers it being awful. I don't remember anything because I don't sleep. But I mean, they kept asking me back, and it was like, it wasn't about money or anything at the time. For me, it was a mutual beneficial thing. Like, they needed people in the studio, I wanted to do it, and I had to have opportunities to do it, to learn what I was supposed to be doing. So once again, I'm basically learning on the job, just like I did it with real estate. So we did a tournament, and I thought that we could add, we had some other people there, I don't remember who they were, but I thought we could add, I thought, because it was on a weekend, no one was in the Twitch office, I thought we could use the screen that was out there to do some kind of like analysis area. So I would sometimes be out there, just, I don't know, I try and focus on some nuance or nerd thing and say, I noticed this or something. Or once I had drawn across the entire map, I just drawn a line on every part of the map and said, I think they should go here, stuff like that. So it was fun. And I did some freelance stuff for them where they paid me, because I think one important thing was that I had production experience. I basically at that point had my own company, which I ran myself and was completely self-sufficient. So I think that shows something if you're able to do that. And then I had the commentator stuff as well, but also I had standards, and I'm very militant with certain things, and I expect a certain level of quality. So I think those were important factors for them. So it's like, you're not just hiring a commentator, you're a guy who can produce for you. So FaceIt did a production in Gamescom for League of Legends, and I was producing it from here, and I had like cameras over there, I had commentators in the Carnaby Street studio, so they entrusted me with that. And so I was producing that on the side, and they were paying me freelance rates, but then they eventually said, do you want to come work for us? I'm like, well, I've got a pretty cushy job. It's pretty easy for me to earn a certain amount of money every year. It's fun. I was taking more holidays than I was allocated, which they found out when I left, and had to pay some money for that. But I said, all right, at this level, because I trust these people, like, they're smart people. Mick actually used to work in the same industry as me, but more in central London doing bigger stuff than me. So we have a lot in common in that respect. So he offered me a full-time job. The contract was very conventional for an unconventional job, and I wanted a few things changed to it, but the CEO hadn't met me, so he didn't know the kind of person I was, so he wasn't sure, like, this looks like, what is this kind of finicky stuff? So I met him, and we had dinner, actually in a place I was in 2 days ago, and because he just wanted to kind of see for himself what I was like, and who am I paying this money to and stuff, and why I wanted these changes in my contract. And I think it was just freedom, so I'm not going to be stuck in the office till 9 p.m. every day.
Oh, so you wanted a flexibility?
Just I wanted to make sure that I could see my girlfriend, basically. So, slightly different words perhaps. So I said, like, look, I want to see my girlfriend. He's like, okay, cool. So joined the company, and it went on from there, really. So at the time I was producing and commentating as well, and eventually started managing some people, and that's where the VP thing came from, I guess.
Well, let's talk about your relationship with DDK. Was it love at first cast? Was he the first person you ever cast with, in fact?
For Counter-Strike, it must have been, because he was the only guy who was always in the office. So, yeah, for a long time.
So you were just stuck together. So
yeah.
It's not like it's almost, I suppose, like a Henry and Matt, Henry and Suddicus.
Well,
they were sort of pushed together, and actually found out after a month they really liked it.
Well, I was stuck with him, whereas there was a time where it was like a revolving door, and other people would be coming in, but then eventually, basically, I was skiving off work. I would put in because I think some of our broadcasts we were starting at like 6, and I would finish at 5:30. But what I would do is say that I had a 5 p.m. appointment in Waterloo, when really I'm just leaving to come here. So I guess that was when it became regular, and we would always be together. And sometimes, I guess, we went out for dinner once. I took him to a Korean, was it Korean? Yeah, Korean place. Not Korean barbecue. Not Korean barbecue.
Korean barbecue is almost like an esports menu.
It is, yeah. But it wasn't Korean barbecue. It was just a Korean place where you'd have like bibimbap and things like that, stone bowl stuff, near Tottenham Court Road, which I think was his first exposure to that, which was pretty cool. That was good, and we got on. We're both geeks, and I think just from the way I grew up, I can be very aggressive, but I'm not just like randomly, you know. That's only if there's friction, but generally I'm pretty chilled out. So we got on pretty well, and we would have fun. You know, he's very geeky, and I like to think I have a good sense of humour. So we played off each other well.
It's interesting that you bonded over dinner, given that you talk about food quite a lot during your cast.
Yeah, I am a foodie. I love. You
love a roast dinner.
Do you know what? I love going out with my friends and having dinner, which is funny because some people, I think if you don't know someone so well, they think it's too formal, like a date or something, but it's just enjoying food and drink. It's the same as a bar, but you're in a chair, you know? So like, I don't know what the problem is, but yeah, I love having good food. I still have never done afternoon tea, you know, never.
So what I'm wondering though is about you and DDK and that chemistry you have. You know, you are a pair, you come as a pair, and I think Reddit and the rest of the internet would explode if suddenly you were divorced. On the minors at one point, maybe it was during the CIS minors, because they were in the morning and then the Americas minors in the evening, and when we were at Wembley for obviously the London major, you would do the desk in the morning and then you'd suddenly go cast in the afternoon. So you're essentially doing 2 shows back to back, and you were doing like a 16-hour shift or something insane. So that hustle that you had in the early days, you still seem to have now.
I think there's actually a lot of value to be had in having experience doing those stupidly long days, because I feel like, I mean, if you're exposed to it every now and then it may not have so much value. But where we've done, like, there was one season where we had best of 3s for Europe and North America, which meant a 12-hour day, essentially, like 11, well, pretty much guaranteed 12-hour plus. So that was fucking awful, but we did it for an extended period of time, and I feel like doing those kind of things just makes everything else easier. So whereas other people might struggle with a slightly long day, you know, by normal standards, it's just piss easy for us because we've done much worse than that. We know how to deal with it. We know how to bring the energy in before the broadcast starts and so on. So it's just like works fine for us.
Yeah, I mean, coming from being a producer where I was doing things like Insomnia, where I was the first person to arrive in the hall, maybe sometimes I'd be beaten by some members of my production team, but because they worked harder than anyone there, and then I'd be the last one to leave, of course. So standard. Yeah, standard. And Insomnia was the one event where I would have esports on stage, so I had to sort of have some discussions with Multiplayer about why we did not put CS and Dota on the same day schedule, because they had a Dota best of 5 or something like that. It was actually crazy. My first event I did outside of Gamescom, the first event I programmed on my own 6 weeks into working at Twitch. Absolute madness. But it does mean I think it gives me an understanding of how long these things can take, and also production as well. And we're all in it together, so it happens. But like if you've had that experience, like you doing your day job and then going and broadcasting for FaceIt, or when I was at Twitch, I would do my day job and then I would go to Jinx, and then I would work for Jinx and do the bridge until 11 p.m. and then I'd get a taxi home.
I remember actually when I was doing the Dream Hacks, the one-man band stuff, I would be I'm just thinking about how long I've done the endurance stuff for, but the Dream Hacks, I would be broadcasting for like 15 hours and I wouldn't take a shit in those 15 hours. Because if I go and take a shit, firstly, I'm not taking a shit in that venue with all those little plebs. I'm going back to the hotel to do it. And secondly, if I go, no one else knows how to run the broadcast, let alone will meet the quality of what I'm doing. So actually, I don't know how. I think it's a mental state. It's like bodily hibernation or something. But I just wouldn't. I'd be there for 15 hours. So I guess the endurance thing I've done almost for 10 years now. So it's just easy for me.
Yeah. Well, hopefully at some point it will change. But in terms of your relationship with DDK, because you guys are known, I mentioned the food thing earlier, you guys are known for having banter, chunks of death, for example. people love that about you guys. You have your catchphrases. You love shouting down at the end of hype sentences, and that's way too simplistic. But for example, you guys are the highlight of that caster soundboard that was created a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that was funny because I feel like. I think maybe because of the volume we commentate, or maybe it's just because of who we are. I feel like if you fill that with like a true representation, it'll be almost entirely just wild things that we're saying all the time. Because I don't know. I feel like I don't know where it comes from, but it's just like the norm for me to just kind of come up with this just outrageous, ridiculous things. So it's a never-ending supply of weirdness from me, and. Yeah, that I think due to exposure to each other, we have our sense of humor is on the same wavelength, but also sometimes he will try, like, I'd say that humor is more my thing, and kind of awkwardness, but also kind of serious conversation is more his thing. So when he tries to be funny, sometimes it's just like funny for all the wrong reasons, but then I can play off that. So he gives me a lot of space to be an idiot and troll him as well, and talk over him and interrupt him deliberately, just, you know. So it's very, again, I think it's just like, if I was doing that to anybody else, I think they would think I'm like a moron or something, but he knows that I'm not doing it because it's like all about me and seriousness. It's just part of the dynamic, really. So I think we play off each other very, very well, and we're on the more serious side, we're not shy to review and be critical of each other as well. And I think there's a really weird thing where if we're watching something and we notice a habit of someone else's, once it's in our mind, we will sometimes start doing that ourselves as well. It's so annoying and really weird. It's really, really weird. It's really weird. So that's something we do, but also I'm very nitpicky and so on. So there'll be a cycle of habits that he does where I'll say, okay, you're doing this. Then he'll try to stop it. I have to keep poking him and be annoying, and then he'll stop it. And then like a few months later, it'll come back and so on. And I have the same things, but I'm not aware of them. It's hard to be aware of them yourself. So I have him for that kind of awareness thing. So I'd say we have a good chemistry, but also we do help each other with that kind of stuff. And sometimes you can fall off and lose focus, or sometimes you have a cast and things you just like, what the hell's going on? This is really bad. But then we'll just talk about it immediately afterwards and find out whatever it is and fix it. So I think we have a good relationship where we can talk to each other. We know each other very well, and obviously has the benefits on the broadcast. And people enjoy engaging with our nonsense as well, so it's pretty awesome. So
that's your USP as a casting pair, it's nonsense.
It could be. I think it's a good one. Yeah, it's like trying to give a normal comparison. I think like Tasteosis is a great pair where they're two people who know each other very well and they have humor on the same wavelength, so I always look up to them in that respect. But I think we're definitely our own flavour, because when I used to broadcast in fighting games, some people, like in an interview or something, would say, "Oh, Jay, you're the Team Spooky of Europe." I'm like, I'm not the Team Spooky of Europe. I'm the me of Europe. Team Spooky is the Team Spooky of America. I'm the me. I'm not trying to be him. We do the same thing, but I'm not in his shadow. I'm my own person, you know. So I wouldn't say like we're the Tasteosis of CSGO, but I do find them inspiring. But we are definitely our own people, and there's no one like us at all. There's no one like us. So
that's what you want. And finally, I want to ask you about your greatest moment in esports. What's the moment you can look back on in years to come and be like, yeah, I was there and I did that?
As somebody working an event?
Whatever it could be. I mean, it could be behind the scenes with FaceIt getting the London Major, or it could be casting the E-League Major finals.
I think one thing I want to mention, I wouldn't say it's the main thing, but it's up there for sure. Before Quake Champions came out, we used to do the Quake tournaments at QuakeCon, and there was the first year I went. Basically, I would go and just be a production lackey. I was capable of plenty more, but I was like, okay, I'm going to be the runner for you guys. I just wanted to come to QuakeCon. If you guys need burgers, water, someone to run a cable, change the focus on the camera, I'm down to do all of that stuff, because I think it's good to I don't think I necessarily need it to not have an ego, but I think it's good, and I think it's good for the relationship with people you manage and stuff as well. Where now suddenly I'm working for them, and it's not just because I can be pretty draconian. If I'm not satisfied with something, I will let you know, and I won't make any bones about it, and that's where the aggression can come out. But I would enjoy going and doing that. And when we had the finals, it was Rafa versus Evil. It was insane. Some people say it was one of the best Quake Live finals ever, maybe the best Quake Live final ever. But it was like unbelievably exhilarating to watch, and just the thud of all those kind of classic weapons and sounds through the speakers. It was really insane. And there were like 3,000 people watching on Twitch. I was so sad. Because honestly, that kind of thing I feel like deserves you just force everyone's page, or it should be on the front page, and the only thing it was that good. But for Counter-Strike, I mean, I guess I could look at like fighting games as well, and going to Evo is pretty cool. Capcom Cup, I had some, we had a great run by Ryan Hartz at Capcom Cup, which was really fun to watch because I was accidentally in the front row where Capcom Japan was supposed to sit. I just took over their seats, but. Going into CS:GO, I think it has to be the Boston Major, and not because I commentated the final, because of the storyline. It doesn't matter who was commentating it to me, but the storyline I feel like was just the perfect storyline for an esports title. I don't follow too many other esports on a personal level, but just the story of Cloud9, people like Skadoodle, people like Stewie, the lack of acceptance from his parents, the struggle to even be able to play the game. Like there are so many storylines. Even on the FaZe Clan side, the repeated failures, almost getting there, always being the bridesmaid, not the bride. There are so many storylines going into that, which were completely insane. Also, Killer Mike was in the intro, which is awesome. But all the storylines were completely unbelievable, and I just feel like it was so good for Counter-Strike, it was so good for esports, and because Turner were filming it and doing a documentary at the same time, I think that there was so much, it was a perfect storm of Counter-Strike and esports basically, and I just feel like it set a fantastic example. And just on a side note, I've got another example of one of the greatest things about Counter-Strike in particular. I think there are there's a literal handful of games where anybody can watch them and really understand and be engaged by it. And I often find one ECS, I was walking in the corridors and the security guards were talking to each other about the game, and they said they got confused at half time when the team swapped. They weren't really sure, but apart from that, they found it really engaging. And in the final, when Stewie was defending the B bomb site with AWP, I had like a super long passage of commentary, and I have asthma, so it wasn't easy for me, but my heart was beating super fast afterwards, and I needed some water and stuff. And we had a guy like to help us and get stuff for us just on the floor, and I was waving at him, and he was looking past my hand to stare at the screen to see what was going on. But I wasn't even mad at that. I thought that was like just a great example of how good our game is.
James, thank you so much for being the 14th guest on My Life in Pixels. That is the last podcast of 2018. Thank you to everyone who has listened to, subscribed, commented, spread the word. I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you. I've mentioned this before on previous episodes, but this year has been totally unexpected and marvellous in so many ways, and I wouldn't be able to do it without your support, so thank you. I did say my next podcast was going to be with Demon, aka Lee Smith, the caster. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to do it over in Stockholm for Global Loot League, so I'm going to try and fix up a recording date maybe over Discord sometime in the new year. And there's a few other guests I'm lining up who I can't wait to talk to. So thank you. If you would like me to keep going with the podcast, as I said earlier, subscribing really helps. Liking the podcast, sharing it with your friends. We're on Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, acast.com/getfrank, and also Podbean. So I'm trying to put out the podcast in as many places as possible so people can enjoy it the way that they prefer to. And I know that Spotify was one that a lot of people had asked for. So hopefully you guys are listening via Spotify right now. It didn't take much effort, it turned out, and it was absolutely my bad, so I apologise for being late to the party with that one. Have a fantastic Christmas, all of you, and have a brilliant new year. don't do anything I wouldn't. And I will be raising a glass to all of you this Christmas. If you want to keep in touch, I probably will be a bit quieter on Twitter over the holidays, but I am at GetFrank on Twitter, on Instagram at GetFrankGames, and on Twitch I am twitch.tv/Frankie, and I'm definitely going to try and do a few more streams before I retire until next year. So until next year, guys, I will see you very, very soon. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.